But you have to fit everything in this box. Everything on this stage that doesn't belong here, I need you to pick it up. Even the elephant, all the gaga balls, the books, basketball backpacks, there's a puppet over here. Everything needs to go. So if you could just get on that for me, that would be great. Don't forget the files over there too. You need those to go. You got this. What's the matter? Well, you don't have to throw it at me. I'm sorry. Is that dynamite? Who in the world was up here? There's a present over there, too. Don't forget yeah, you got this. Well, that's smart. I didn't think about that. That's smart. Maybe you could wear it? That would help. Put stuff on top of it. There you go. Oh, there you go. Okay, come on up here. Come on up here. There's way too much stuff to fit in the bag, the box that I gave you, right? It's impossible. Okay, well, just if you could try a little bit harder. I mean, my illustration is riding on you right now, man. This whole thing could crumble without you, so I need you to try just a little bit more. It's possible. I mean, I could probably do it, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, backpack is free game. Yeah, that's all you. Are you sure you got this? You were so confident before you got up here. How can you even see with that hat on? It's covering your whole face. You're getting pretty close. I actually didn't think this would be possible. It doesn't open. He can't really use the present. Don't do that. Okay, look around for a second. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bigger athletic balls. You've got a big elephant, a cowboy hat, a present, a puppet. This doesn't seem very possible, does it? Kinda. It seems kinda impossible. Well, believe me, there is a purpose for this. I mean, I really need you to believe that. And in fact, there's not just a purpose for this. I called Gavin specifically up here for a purpose. Oh, you don't expect me to tell you, right? Well, no, that's not how this works. I mean, this is the sermon I'm preaching, and this is the illustration I'm using, so you should just trust that I have a purpose for this illustration, right? That this is all going to make sense? Okay, Gavin, you can have a seat. I appreciate it. You can wear the sombrero if you want to. I'm just kidding. Yeah, give him a hand. Good job, Gavin. You can have a seat. Thank you. You can take it off. Okay, so now I want you to turn to, if you want, sure. Turn to Job chapter number 38 for me, okay? The passage that we're about to read is of a man who had a lot happen to him. Job chapter number 38, of a man who had a lot of bad things happen to him. And that's kind of the understatement of the century. He went through more than probably most humans, or I would say the majority of people have gone through. He looked towards God and asked why this was happening and why these afflictions. What did I do to deserve this? And because of this, we got an undeniable example of the fact that God will sometimes allow things to happen that make no sense to us. Yet, in our eyes, there's no reason for these things to happen, and horrible things will continue to happen to good people. All the while, bad people seem blessed, and we wonder why God is doing what he's doing. And the question I want us to ask ourselves tonight is that wrong? Is it wrong to wonder why things are happening? Is it wrong to question why? We're going to look at both sides of the argument. And so hopefully, when you leave today, you'll know whether or not it's wrong to ask why certain situations happen. And I promise that'll start to make sense as we go on. But as we look around and wonder why certain things happen, we'll hopefully have a clear answer of if that's okay. So Job chapter number 38, we're just going to read verse 1 through 3. Verse 1 through 3 says, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me." Job was a man who had been through a lot. Job was a man who had been through a lot. Like I said, understatement of the century. He had been through more than hopefully any of us will ever have to go through. Turn to Job chapter number 1 while you're in the book of Job. Chapter number 1. And we will read verse 13 through 22. Job chapter 1, verse number 13. It says, "And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house," and that's Job's sons and daughters. "And there came a messenger unto Job and said, The oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The fire of God is fallen from heaven and hath burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I only am escaped to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The Chaldeans made out 3 bands and fell upon the camels and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly." Think about what Job was going through. All of his livestock. I mean, Job was a very wealthy man. All of his livestock was taken away. All of his family was taken away. And if we were to go through the rest of the book and go through the next couple chapters, you would see as Job lost his health and became very sick. And it didn't just end there. Throughout the book of Job, his wife would basically tell him to just curse God already so that God would kill him. 3 of his closest friends would go on to accuse him of doing some horrible sin, and maybe that's why God is doing all of this to him. And the passage that we jumped in at Job 38, is right after all of this took place. After Job's 3 friends went on and on talking about how Job must be doing wrong in the sight of God, after his wife said, just curse God so we'll kill you, Job chapter number 38 happens. At the point when we jumped in, Job had been through probably more than any of us in this room. An immense amount of pain and suffering for one person to go through. Yet the last verse of Job chapter 1 that we just read says he did not sin against God. And now this was confusing for me when I first read it because, let's look at Job chapter number 10 real quick as well, if you don't mind. I know we're doing a lot of turning, but this will make sense, I promise. Look at Job chapter number 10, verses 2 through 4. Job 10, verses 2 through 4. I will say unto God, do not condemn me. Show me wherefore thou contendest with me. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked? Hast thou eyes of flesh, or seest thou as a man? Job questioned God. A man who was said that he wasn't sinning against God or cursing God foolishly, questioned God. Maybe I'm the only one who was confused when I got to this part where Job said this, because the entirety of the book of Job starts with Satan coming to God and saying, I could trip Job up and prove that Job is only worshiping you because of his riches. And God said, you could take all of his riches away, you could take his health away, take everything away but his own life, and he still won't deny me. So that's why everything happened to Job. And you get to the end of the book of Job, and it turns out that that was true. Spoiler alert, but Job, according to the Bible, never cursed God one time or had any sort of disbelief or lack of faith in God. Yet chapter 10, verses 2 through 4 has Job saying, Lord, do you just not see things how I'm seeing them? Are you not looking from my vantage point? Are you not understanding what's actually going on? This goes completely against what I was taught in church growing up, because I was taught that you don't question God and you don't question his ways. I mean, that makes sense, right? After all, Job is the one who tells us that, or the book of Job tells us that Job would never curse God, yet here this is. And so is this not a curse to question the ways of God? Job wasn't the only one to do this, though. Job wasn't the only person throughout the Bible that questioned God. As I read through this, the first who came to my mind was Habakkuk. Habakkuk questioned God. He was one of the minor prophets towards the end of the Old Testament, and he questioned God and why God allowed certain things to happen. Habakkuk looked around at all of the wrongdoing and the evil during his time, and he wondered, why is this going on? In fact, if you're familiar with the book of Isaiah, Isaiah says truth is fallen in the streets. That was the same time period that Habakkuk was written. So Isaiah, when he said truth is fallen in the streets, and Habakkuk wondering, why are all these evil people getting away with what they're doing? It was as though to say, we're telling them the truth and they're not listening and they're doing the wrongdoing, and God, you're just allowing them to get away with it. Why is this happening? Habakkuk had questions and questioned why God allowed certain things. David also questioned why God would allow certain things. And David was labeled as a man after God's own heart in the Bible. But Psalm 10, which was written by David, opens up with these words: "Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thyself in times of trouble?" David said, "Lord, why do you seem to hide when life gets difficult? And why does it seem hard to reach you when things are not going well for me?" And David questioned God. Mashil, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but the psalmist for Psalm chapter 74 said, "O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Why do you allow bad things to happen to people who profess to follow you, Lord? Why is this going on?" But then I'd like to direct our attention to the most important person to ever question God. And I'm going to ask you to turn in your Bible one more time, if you can do that for me. We're going to turn to Matthew chapter number 26. Matthew chapter number 26, and just look at me when you found it, and I'll know to start reading. And we'll be in verse 36 when you find it. So Matthew 26, verse number 36. To give some context to where we're about to jump in at, this is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. For those who don't know, this is the point in Jesus' story right before he would go on to die on a cross so that you and I could be saved and have an eternity in heaven with God rather than an eternity in hell. This is Jesus almost like his final prayer to God and his final time to get alone with God, one of his last chance to disciple the 12 men who have been following him and teach them what a real prayer life looks like. And this is that passage. So Matthew chapter 26, look at verse 36. "Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto the disciples, Sit ye here, while I go and pray yonder. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then saith he unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch with me. And he went a little farther, and fell on his face, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he cometh unto the disciples, and findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, What, could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again the second time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were very heavy." We can stop there. Here Jesus is found praying to God to let this cup pass from him. What cup is that? Death. The cup of death, the cup of sorrow, the cup of pain and suffering that he was getting ready to have to drink. Jesus knew when he was sent to earth to be a sacrifice for you and I that it would require death. That part of God's plan in him coming to earth was to die on a cross so that you and I could be saved. He knew that going into this. Yet here we see him praying, Father, let this cup pass from me. If there's a way for your will to work around this, and people can be saved without a perfect sacrifice being necessary, then allow that to happen. If not, I'll do it. But if there's any way around it, then have it be that way instead. And we see Jesus wondering if there's a second option in God's will for his life. Another plan, almost saying, God, is this the only way? I'm not saying that Jesus had a lack of faith in God. We're going to explain that, but he had some sort of questions for God. He was questioning God. So if we believe that questioning God in and of itself is a sin, then you and I are not saved. I mean, that's a harsh way to put it, but if Jesus just sinned in the garden, then he died on the cross for no reason because he wasn't a perfect sacrifice. Therefore, he could not have sinned when saying, God, let this cup pass from me. So that means that questioning itself is not a sin, or we have no hope. And I choose to believe that questioning in and of itself is not a sin. I don't believe that questioning and doubting are the exact same thing. I do believe that questioning could very, very, very easily turn into arguing with God, but I don't believe that they are one and the same. Are they similar? Are they close? Maybe, but not the same thing. But I think we're asking ourselves the wrong question when we say, is questioning God a sin? See, now that we know questioning God is not inherently wrong, yet puts you closer to sin, that it's not an act of sin itself, but it can tempt you to sin, that you'll be more tempted to sin in those moments of questioning. The question that we should be asking is, and the same thing that Job maybe should have asked himself was, is the questioning God necessary? Is questioning God necessary? We'll look at what God had to say again. I thought about reading the entirety of Job chapter number 38 and then skipping to Job chapter number 40 and reading the entirety of both chapters, but I don't know if I could hold your attention good enough to be able to do that. So I'm going to give a summary of it, and I'm going to walk through it. If you want to follow along, you can. If you want to write it down and check later, make sure I'm not lying to you. Do whatever you need to do. But I'm going to walk through what happens in chapter number 38 and touch on what happens in chapter 40 as well. Because God starts talking to Job. As we saw, we read the first 3 verses of chapter 38. But God goes on to really start to ask Job some serious questions. God asks Job if he was there when the foundations were laid for the earth. If Job was there when the earth was created. Or if Job made the stars and put them in place. Does Job know what the depths of the sea look like? Does he have any control over it? Has Job experienced death or had to look into death's door before? Does Job even understand how big the earth actually is? Does Job know how light and darkness work? Was he even there when light was created? Explain how snow and hail work and how you control that, Job. Rain, lightning, thunder, you got all that? Is that all under your control? The constellations and their beauty, did you hang the stars there? Did you align those in those places? Do you know the number of clouds at any given moment? Do you feed the lions and give them the prey that they need to fill their bellies? And do you make sure that the ravens have their next meal? Do you ensure that the wild goats are doing okay and that the wild donkeys are in their place? Do you take care of the unicorn in the valleys? And do you make the peacocks so pretty? Did you make the ostrich as swift and as powerful as it is? Maybe you're the one who gave the horse its strength, and you're the one that gave the hawk its wisdom. When you go fishing, Job, are you catching leviathans? Are you in control of those massive creatures? Do you get the point that's being presented? God lists thing after thing after thing. Sun, moon, stars, the constellations, the clouds, the weather, rain, snow, hail, name the weather. It's listed. He lists donkeys, he lists goats, he lists unicorns of all things, he lists peacocks, he lists ravens, he lists lions, as if to almost drive Job to the point of being overwhelmed. Overwhelmed in realizing that there's no way that Job could ever understand the balances of the universe that God is controlling, much less control them on his own. God asks Job if he would like to take care of all these things and if he would like to have this balance in his hands, and the answer would obviously be no. At any moment, any of that could fall apart. Would God decide to stop keeping it in balance? And God was using all of these varying things to show Job that all of these things are balanced by God, and none of them have failed yet, so Job was certainly not being overlooked by God. God has the understanding of the universe, and he has the understanding of how everything fits together and works with one another. Just because Job is going through unfavorable circumstances does not in the slightest mean that God has lost control. This was not just to be a beating over the head for Job. This really could come off as an encouragement. Because if God can take care of all of these things and more, then of course he could take care of Job. He mentioned the horse, the ostrich, the leviathan, the unicorn, raven, lion, donkey, and goat, as if to say that if God can take care of the zoo, he can take care of you. Job comes to the humble understanding that questioning God was not ever necessary. God has had control of it all from the beginning. There was no reason for Job to question God. God has a plan that's being carried out. There was no reason for Habakkuk to question God. God had a plan. There was no reason for David to question God. God had a plan. There was no reason for Mashiel to question God because God had a plan. And Jesus in the garden knew more than anybody that God had a plan. See, questioning is a very tricky thing because I cannot say that it is a sin, but I can very confidently say that you should avoid it. I can tell you with certainty that it is a very easy stumbling block to set up for yourself that will tempt you to have a lack of faith or tempt you to not trust God or the next steps that He has for you. It's tripped up many a Christian before, so it would be foolish to think that it couldn't trip us up as well. There are doubting people all around us. Maybe they're going through tough times similar to Job was. Life is tough, let's be honest. They wonder why God allows certain things to happen, and they look to their lost friends and see a prosperous and flourishing life. Lord, why does this happen? Doubting happens more often than just difficult circumstances, though. Maybe God's called them to do something they don't want to do, and rather than follow through with it, they turn their backs on God. People question God, and such is only human, but the sin happens when doubt and lack of faith replaces questioning. Doubt means not having a trust in God and not thinking that He knows what He's doing. Not trusting God, not trusting that God does know what He's doing is the opposite of faith. Hebrews 11:6, the first half of it says, "And without faith it is impossible to please Him." For those struggling with questioning, they have to be especially tough during times of, or those struggling with faith have to be especially tough during times of questioning because it's going to be especially easy to give way to the temptation to start to doubt God or the idea that God isn't in control of everything. It's going to be a lot easier to fall for that if you're constantly keeping questioning in front of you. Yes, life is scary, and yes, hard times happen, but God has it under control. Yes, decisions are intimidating, and yes, God's will is scary. Yes, you will be out of your comfort zone, but God has it under control. Maybe you specifically are going through a difficult time right now. In the past couple weeks, the church has been through some very difficult times. We're only human, so there's a very high chance that if the church has gone through something difficult and we're only human, so our tendency is to question God, then I have to imagine that there are people in this room thinking things along the lines of, God, why this? God, why now? Or why like this? God, why him? But we cannot, listen, we cannot allow that to become, God, are you sure? God, you've got the wrong guy. God, this is wrong. God, you should have picked somebody else. God, you should not have allowed this, because the second that questioning turns into doubt, we have entered into the wrong. Maybe you personally, not just the church, but you personally are going through something. We're all human, so not maybe, but definitely you personally are going through something. As a youth pastor, my brain tends to default to things that teenagers might be going through because they're getting ready to head back into school. Not only are they getting ready to head back into school, but we've just come off a week of camp where many decisions were made. First, starting with public school. If you're going back into a public school after you've made decisions for God at camp, then you're going to have some questions right away when your friends start making fun of you or trying to test you on the decisions that you've made. And you might wonder, God, why have you put me in this school? Even if you go to a Christian school, there's a good chance, and I've even heard from students at various Christian schools, that you're being taught things that are just mildly conflicting with what you've learned here at Grace, and you might wonder, Lord, why am I under this wrong teaching? Even if you're homeschooled, you might even wonder, Lord, why am I homeschooled? I don't get to go to school with any of my friends. I also, during this time, think of our seniors who are getting ready to either go to college or move out or start a job or some combination of the aforementioned. And there's a lot of questions with every step during that phase of life. Every step, it's God, do I have to go to that school? God, do you want me to study this? God, I really want to pursue this other career. God, I don't fully understand why this is happening. God, I don't even know exactly what you're calling me to yet, and you want me to go to a Bible college? God, I know that you're calling me to something else. Are you sure that you want me to do a year at Bible college? Or maybe it's, God, all of my friends are going to Bible college. Are you sure you don't want me to do that as well? Parents of the seniors probably have a lot more questions than the seniors even do. God, why that school? Out of the state or across the country? Or is that what they're even supposed to study? What if they need my help? What if something happens? Maybe you have other concerns that are represented within this room because we have varying age groups. God, are you sure that you want me in this workplace? They keep treating me unfairly and I'm just tired of it. God, are you sure that you want me around these coworkers? They're crude and explicit and I'm tired of being around them. Are you sure that this is where you've placed me? God, are you sure that I need to be in church when the doors are opened? I mean, I do my own devotions or we do family devotions. God, why do you want me to reach such and such or this individual with the gospel? It's uncomfortable for me. God, if I invite that friend to church, then they're not going to like me anymore. They're not going to talk to me anymore. Maybe, again, varying stages in life. God, are you sure retirement is right for me? Or maybe it's, God, are you sure that I shouldn't retire yet? There are questions at every stage in life, and a lot of the times it's very easy to question God. We all have questions for God, if we're honest with ourselves. But we must understand, even during the time of questioning, that the questioning ultimately is unnecessary. God already has it figured out, and God is already balancing the rest of the world and universe around us. Do we not think that He's taking care of us as well? God has it all taken care of and has all the answers for our questions. However, He owes us 0 answers. Gavin, could you come back up here real quick? I asked you to gather all of this stuff up in a box. Very random stuff, a puppet, soccer ball, gaga ball, basketball, files, a stuffed animal, costumes, books. And you never one time asked me why in the world I had all this stuff up here. Did you ever wonder that? You did? In the end, he could have asked me, why is all this up here? Why do you want me specifically to clean it up? And you were probably wondering, what does this illustration have to do with anything? But reality is that I owed Gavin and the rest of you no answers. I had answers, but did I owe you those answers? Not necessarily. You can have a seat. Thank you, Gavin. God has the answers for every question that we can think of or that we could ask Him, but reality is that He owes us no answers. If God were to give us every answer for every question we had, then we would never even need to have faith because God would just show us everything that was going to happen. But reality is God wants us to have faith and to trust Him during times where sometimes it makes no sense and we would not understand why things are happening the way they are. Well, God knows why they're happening. He just doesn't owe us the answers to them, and right now He wants us to trust Him. Now, we do have to understand that despite questions being okay and asking God why things are going on being okay, we have to be on guard. And we do have to trust that God does know what He's doing. Even when we think it makes no sense, we have to understand that God is working it out for our good and for His glory. We must understand that it's all under God's control and that He balances the sun, the moon, the stars, and He's mindful of you and I. He takes care of the zoo, and He can take care of you. Questioning God is not wrong, but it can open up the door for doubting, for questioning, for lack of faith. So we have to be careful, because although doubting and questioning God is easy, we have to remember that questioning God is never necessary. It's under control, so why set the stumbling block of questioning God up in front of us? If we believe that He has it under control, then we should never need to question Him. Now, we're human, we're going to question Him, so when the time comes, don't have a lack of faith. And don't have doubt. Don't accuse God, and don't say that God is. Don't do what Job also did not do. This. It says that he did not foolishly charge God. Don't ever say to God that He's doing wrong or that He's not in control like He says He is. God, do you not see things how I'm seeing them, like Job said. No, don't tell God those things. Let's trust that He has it all balanced and under control, and have faith that He's going to take care of us. Let's stand, and then we will be dismissed by a word of prayer. Brother Hunt, do you mind praying for us this evening?
Hello, Pastor William Brooks, Grace Baptist Church, Decatur, Texas. I'd like to personally thank you for joining our services online today. If the Lord used the message in any way to speak to your heart, please let us know. If you have any questions regarding the service, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at gracebaptistdecatur.com or call us at the office 940-627-7558. If there's anything else we can do for you as a church, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to be of assistance to you. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love to see you in person sometime.